I'm here at Shore Leave 40 with actor Peter Williams. Thank you for speaking with me.
My pleasure, man.
So tell me, where did acting start for you?
That's a commonly asked question, but that's a good thing because I have a commonly prepared response. I got out of university with a Bachelor of Arts degree that was not easily translatable into a gainful occupation. I did a series of temporary jobs before my brother dared me to answer an ad for actors required ad in the newspapers, and I did so. I got the part, to cut the long story short, and wound up for an entire month playing to packed houses as the light relief in Whose Life Is It Anyway, which most people know as a Richard Dreyfuss film. But this was a stage production of it, and the character I played had all the funny lines, all the comic relief. Yeah. So every time I opened my mouth, I had a response from the crowd, a positive response, and I was hooked. So I moved to a bigger city and waited on a million tables and worked my way into the Actors Union and got lucky.
So did you work where you're from? I'm not sure where you grew up.
I'm Jamaican. I grew up in Jamaica, but yes, good question. For context, I immigrated to Canada in 1981, and this is a Canadian story.
So, are you a comedy person? Is that why you had that role? Or?
No, another excellent question. It was not by design that I got the comedic part. Any part would have done. It just so happened that this was light relief in the play itself is about a quadriplegic, so it was heavy topic. Yeah. It was heavy topic, and the light relief was all in my character.
Okay.
Everything else was message.
So during the course of your career, were there points or a point where you said, "Wow, I'm really in this," you know? And once you hit that point, did it change how you approached it?
I'm really glad I did this interview because that's an extremely intelligent question. I was born with a pretty face, so I sort of got in for the superficial reasons. And once in, how did I get in? I got in because it can be a bit of a catch-22 at times. You have to get the good work. You have to be in the union. To get into the union, you have to have some good work, and the two don't usually come together. I got some beer commercials. I did Carlsberg commercials, which were edited into several different spots, and I got several union permits, which allowed me to join the union. Once into the union, I realized, hey, I'm in. I've got to do this right. So I took some acting lessons. Acting classes for me started with improv. I did improv at Second City, and yes, again, we're on to humor. But I didn't see it at the time as something that was going to stay with me. It was more just a way to practice some chops, and eventually it translated into some work.
So, I think I already suspect the answer, but being Jamaican, the work you got, were you sort of typecast as, oh, you're the Jamaican, or did you feel more freedom?
I had a little bit more freedom because I fit nobody's stereotype of anything. I'm a bit of an oddball. In fact, I auditioned 3 times for that bobsled movie, Cool Runnings, and I didn't get the part because I wasn't Jamaican enough. In fact, I'm more Jamaican than any of the guys in that movie.
Ironic.
But as it stands, my life would have been very different had I had that movie. By the way, that was a big hit, and it was a big hit in Jamaica too. But c'est la vie. No, typecasting was not an issue for me because I tend to straddle boundaries personally.
So I want to talk about Stargate. I mentioned that I'm interested in how the props, costumes, and set sort of affected. How did it affect you working in a very visual environment?
I told you what I got out of university with, a Bachelor of Arts degree. It was geography and archaeology. So the archaeology side of me was turned on by the imagery that I was surrounded with, my character was surrounded with. I had passing interest in Egyptology, hieroglyphics, pyramids, sarcophagi, Cairo, the Great Rift Valley, yes, it was. But I didn't have a choice. This part came to me. It's not like I sought it out, and when it was decorated around me, it just happened to fit. Yes, the designs. I was also very fortunate. This was a show that was pre-sold for 4 seasons, so they had a very, very stout budget. And because of that, I was surrounded by people at the top of their game. Set designers, art directors, story editors, people who were already established in the industry, far more so than I was. And so I was very fortunate in that.
So when you were on the set, was there any point where you saw something visual design that just blew your mind, that you were just...
Most of it did, because it was not only archaeologically influenced, it was science fiction, it was fantasy based. So it was essentially a hyperbole of both those things, and was designed to blow your mind. It blew our minds, and it blew the viewers' minds.
So your archaeology interests, which periods did you really get into?
Yes, Roman period, mostly European archaeology, because I studied in Britain. So the Roman period was particularly interesting to me, and Stone Age, Neolithic, that kind of thing. But if you come up a little closer to the present day, into the medieval periods, I was far less interested.
So why Roman stuff?
Well, the Roman Empire prefigured some of the empires we see nowadays, and I'm a bit of a lay philosopher, so the rise and fall of empires fascinates me. The human dissipation that occurred at the fall of the Roman Empire was fascinating. I mean, it's debauchery at its best. It's the death of moralism, and it left us with Latin. It left us with language, and you might have figured out I'm a bit of a language nerd.
Oh, okay.
All the Latin-based languages. I'm not a polyglot. I don't speak another language, but I do have. I feel like I can understand cross-cultural communication very well.
Does that mean have you been interested in fantasy, that has Game of Thrones kind of stuff? Does that interest you?
I'm going to alienate most of the fandom by saying no.
That's fine.
No, I'm not into Lord of the Rings. I'm not into Hobbits. I'm not into anything that reminds me of the medieval period. For some reason, I have a distaste for that because of its association because of the reverence that it's held in by people from the colonial period. And I'm a child of the colonies, and that sort of shaped my small p politics.
Are you familiar with the book Omeros, a poem?
No, I'm not.
It was a Caribbean poet, Walcott, I think.
Well, I know who he is.
I think that's who wrote it.
Walcott's is our late great poet laureate. So I guess I give myself away there by saying that I don't recognize the title, but perhaps I should, and I will. Look for it.
It's a retelling of, I believe, that either the Iliad or the Odyssey within the Caribbean. Yeah. It's a fisherman who's going about. So
I know what I'm doing this evening once I get back to my hotel room.
Omeros, I think. So, Game of Thrones is medieval, but I was thinking in terms of the armor and stuff. Would you like to have a role where you were a centurion or maybe toga?
I actually. I'm reaching back now very deep, and I can't recall what this show was, but I do remember wearing some armor with a nose one of those metallic nose bridges that if you were ever struck across the face, that was supposed to protect your nose, your breathing. I forget what that show was. But I am partial to costumes because I recognize just how much a really good, well-designed costume can do for a character. So yes, I wouldn't mind playing something like that.
So if you had your choice, would you like a magnificently costumed character versus just a regular everyday kind of person?
At the point I'm at now, I think regular everyday kind of person appeals to me more, but there was a time when the costume would have tilted my favor.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have titillated my interest.
So now science fiction, you said you're interested in science fiction?
I cut my eye teeth on the original Star Trek. I liked Lost in Space. I'm older than I look. Stargate is something that interested me when I saw the movie, perhaps even more than the series, to tell you the truth. The movie was really stuck with me. 2001 Space Odyssey, I really liked. Back to the Future, gotta say.
Oh, yeah. Gotta
mention that one. Love it. Yes, I have an interest in science fiction, but I wouldn't say I have fetishized it or anything. Funnily enough, post Stargate, perhaps I've become more interested in it as I've met the fandom, met and mingled with the fandom.
Yeah,
I have come to realize that I am a nerd. Yeah.
So, do you still have an interest in? You said geography was your.
That was my major. Yeah, double major, exactly.
So do you still have an interest in any kind of sciences of any sort?
Well, mostly social science and political science, I think, would be more along my, in my sphere of interest. Biological science, too, I'm into plants and their healing properties and that sort of thing. But in terms of electronics or chemical technologies or even nuclear physics, no, not so much.
Okay.
But I tell you what, the last couple of nights I've been outside looking through a telescope to see Venus and Jupiter and Saturn with the rings. Fascinating.
So you haven't seen that before?
Never saw it before, and I was just fascinated to actually see the rings around Saturn. The three of the four moons around Jupiter. I saw a globular cluster.
Oh wow!
Yes, how's that for a term?
Yeah.
And the ring nebula.
Oh wow!
Yeah, saw that last night.
So they have some powerful telescopes.
They do. There's some NASA folks that had the next booth down, and and they they opened it up for everybody to have a look.
Nice. Yeah, I missed that, unfortunately. But when you were a kid, was there a high-tech device or superpower you wished you had?
You know what? I was asked that earlier today, and I gotta go with invisibility, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's one that every randy schoolboy fancies.
Yeah. Just kind of poke around.
Yeah, and Apophis had a force field. That's another good one.
Okay.
That would repel any projectiles shot at you.
So now, what do you think the actor's role in society is?
You know what? That might have changed since the 2016 American election. We're in a position where people listen to what we say. You do have a certain kind of influence on. I live in a small town, for example, and people who find out I'm an actor always listen to what I have to say, whether it's valuable or not.
Okay.
And I think social conscience. I would have to just draw the line under that phrase, social conscience.
Do you have a big role you'd love to sink your teeth into in the future?
I'm a lover, not a fighter. So anything with a peaceful outlook, socio-political message, conscience would appeal to me.
Do you
Perhaps with a love interest thrown in.
Oh, okay. You have someone in mind? You don't have to say who, but
It varies from week to week.
I got it. Are you on social media at all? Can people find you online?
I am, yes. I'm on Facebook. I'm a little more discriminating with who I interact with on Facebook these days for obvious reasons. But if you want to follow my Twitter at actual Apophis, I would be more than happy to add you and exchange the odd message.
So that's actual Apophis?
Correct.
Spelled actual Apophis.
Correct.
On Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Do you have any last words?
I thank you very much for your interest, and I'll see you on social media.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening. One of the best ways in which you can provide feedback for this podcast is to rate me on iTunes. Please give me a good rating if you like this, or feel free to give me a bad rating if you didn't, and I'll use that feedback to hopefully make this a better podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram under Chris Alvarez Sci-Fi, on Facebook under Chris Alvarez WLC, on YouTube under Chris Alvarez WLC, and on Twitter under Chris Alvarez WLC. You can also get more information on my website, chrisalvarez.com. Please remember my name Chris does not have an H, so it's Chrisalvarez.com. Thanks for listening, and keep imagining the future.